Reach high, aim high, and obtain. For those of you that don't know this, there's very much sanitation questions that I've been getting from people on this, and I want to kind of give you an overview of that real quick. If you're worried about sanitation, in regards to sanitation, if that is a concern, one thing that you can do, and I do that here at the house, is boiling hot water, and you can pour that over your containers that you're using. I do it over my wooden spoon. When it comes to the containers that I'll actually do the yogurt in, I put it in the dishwasher, and my rinse aid is white vinegar because my dishwasher requires rinse aid. So I use white vinegar, which is very much of a cleaning agent too. And then with the hot heat of the dishwasher, all of that together really makes sure that the fermenting yogurt containers for making the yogurt are clean. And I make sure that I avoid touching the inside of the container, touching the inside of the lids. I very much am careful with where I put my hands, even when they're clean. And of course, they're clean doing this, but I just am very careful about the containers to make sure that there's preventing a potential contamination of where the yogurt will ultimately sit for the processing and the creation of the yogurt part. And then everything else, I make sure that if need be, I pour boiling water over the items. I typically use this specific spoon just for the yogurt. I do that on purpose so it limits potential contamination. And then this container, I always make sure it's very thoroughly washed. If I'm not 100% confident in its state, then I will pour boiling water over it and everything else as well. And that's just to make sure that it's in a state that I know is sanitized and I'm comfortable. And then in regards to discoloration potentially that I've seen some people mention in regards to yogurt. Now I do get kind of a yellow color on the top, and I know that's from the fat in my heavy cream. One person mentioned, oh, that's butter on the top. Well, butter does come from heavy cream. So yes, it does have a butter type look. Now, if it's a light pink on the top or black, I have seen in one video where somebody had black, looked like spores of some kind that formed on top of their yogurt. I would toss that. I wouldn't even touch it with a 10-foot pole. I just wouldn't do it. To me, there's just certain things you don't do when it comes to one's health. Now, why I'm using the heavy cream, I do want to mention why. I did originally start doing what Dr. Davis said, which was half and half. However, it was not ultra pasteurized. I don't believe in doing ultra pasteurized milk. For me, I feel like my body doesn't like it, and it has a little bit of difficulty digesting something that's been so pasteurized it's dead. So for me, I just did not believe in doing ultra pasteurized, and I don't do ultra pasteurized in general. I feel like that's going to the extreme. But I did find that I did start with just slightly pasteurized, like I said, by this particular company. And I had that separation and I would drain it. But I felt like and I say drain, meaning I'm separating the whey from the yogurt part, okay? So the whey is the liquidy, yellow looking part, and then there's the yogurt that you get as a result, which forms kind of like a Greek yogurt. But for me, I felt like it was extremely acidic. I felt like the texture wasn't there, the flavor wasn't there. I was putting, maple syrup in it to help it, and it wasn't pleasurable. And I don't think anyone should have to force themselves to eat something that's unpleasant just to help their health. That's just how I think food should be pleasurable. I think it's like what Pythagoras said, let food be thy medicine and medicine thy food. So taking that into consideration, I started experimenting because I did not like the half and half. And by the time I got to a certain point, I said, you know what? I want to add heavy cream to that. I want to add cream to this, and hopefully the cream will make it thicker. So what I did is I added the cream a little bit at a time with each batch until finally I says, you know what? I'm noticing such a texture difference. I says, guys, I want to do full-on heavy cream. And everyone in the family went, that's a bit heavy on the cream. My mom's making a face because she remembers the conversation. And I said, let's just try it once, okay? And everyone said, once, we'll try it once. So everyone was like, okay, we'll try this once. And we tried it the first time, and it came out so beautifully. Texture-wise, flavor-wise, I did have the little bit of water, you know, that I'm showing you that was in the first few batches. But the more time you do this, the less that water separation happens. And even with the water separation, when I stir it, it actually becomes thick. And especially if I let it sit again, the water incorporates with the fat of the yogurt I've made. And I know this isn't traditional yogurt, but it is a yogurt texture-like product. And therefore I'm using the word yogurt, although it uses a different strain. Another thing I do want to also mention in regards to the Reuteri, which is this product here, is I did try other brands of Reuteri, and even though I was always getting the consistency once I switched to the full heavy cream, okay? I have to be frank. Once I switched to the full heavy cream, I was getting the texture, but I was not getting the potency. And I felt like I needed to keep reintroducing the Reuteri from the other products I bought. Once I switched to this, and I'm doing the heavy cream, it is so strong that I only do a few tablespoons at a time with anything because it is so strong in my opinion. And I think my mom can agree with you. She's nodding her head yes. And one thing I did, because I did get this, just because I wanted to test it, which is the Gut to Glow. And before I got his products, now I realized before I got any of his products, I was using others and I was doing heavy cream, and I noticed the consistency was perfect, but the potency wasn't there, okay? I noticed, and I have to point this out, on the back of his product, it says here, let me put this aside just slightly so I can read it. It says directions, take 4 capsules daily, preferably with a fat containing meal for enhanced absorption. Now, when I saw that, I went, yes, because I've been doing that since day one when I switched to heavy cream. So that's why I'm getting my potency now, is because his product says consume with heavy cream or consume with the fat. And so therefore my heavy cream is right in alignment with what we need to do.